Welcome to episode 3 of Set Up for Success. I'm your host, Sarah Lee, and today we have a very special guest on the podcast. We have the TikTok sensation who is setting the digital world on fire with his captivating energy and contagious content. He is elite, and he also loves a good hood jam. So if you
Yes.
don't know, I'm talking about DeAndre Brown. DeAndre, how are you?
I am doing good. How are you?
I'm doing good. It's good to see you. We're matching. If you guys aren't watching the visuals,
Yes.
DeAndre and I both thought black was the vibe, and I live for that.
It
So
was the vibe.
I got to meet you. I want people to have like a little backstory too. I got to meet you at NBA All-Star Weekend, and I just want to ask you
hmm
just to follow up and catch up with you. How did you enjoy the whole weekend with AT&T? Because we were both with AT&T. So how was that for you?
Yeah, it was a phenomenal experience. I think that AT&T is doing like some really phenomenal work. So it was really great to be a part of that throughout the weekend and like meeting you and all the other trailblazers, I'll say, that you all are.
Yeah.
Um, And I don't know. I learned so much, and also I know you go to an HBCU as well, but me graduating from an HBCU,
Yeah.
like it's so great to go back to those environments and like you know be around my people because when you get in the real world, you don't get that as much as you do. So it's good to be brought back to those type
Yeah.
of environments. But I had a phenomenal time, and I did a
Yeah.
panel. The panel with AT&T went really well as well. So yeah, it
What
was
do you
good.
think what do you think that you learned like that sticks out to you the most just from the entire time? And did it even sink in like, "Oh my god, I'm getting here from AT&T and I'm just here representing my brand." Like does that even feel surreal to you that you're just there just because you're you?
Um, you know what? I've done a lot of um I've done a lot of like sit down talks and panels, I'll say,
Mhm.
interviews, all of that. And it's so funny you mention that because never started to sink in until like recently, but
Mm.
it's like after everything has happened. I've
Mhm.
now been in this phase of my life where I've been more chill, more relaxed, just traveling and living for me. And I felt
Yeah.
like last year I was my brand was so big at the time. So I was going, I was, traveling for work and I wasn't taking time for me. And
Mhm.
now I'm taking time for me and I really sit back and I'm like, man, I really did this. I really did that. Um, so looking back, it's like, wow, this is phenomenal that I was able to do this. But at the time, it was more so I'm working. This is just what I'm doing. And it was like, I think because things were moving so fast, it was like thing after thing after thing where you don't have
Yeah.
time to sit and like relish in what you're doing. So yeah,
Sure, like for sure. That's why I was just thinking because it seems like a lot, but it's just
yeah,
also amazing to now you have the time to actually soak it all in. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Um, I was doing more research on you and I found that DeAndre, we have so much in common, just me and you. We have a
Okay,
lot in common. First thing I found that we have in common is that we both went to Catholic high schools when we were younger.
yes. Where did you go?
And now so I'm from Decatur. That's where I grew up. I was born in Conyers, Georgia, but I grew up my whole life in Decatur, Illinois. So my high
Okay.
school is St. Teresa High School. It's a
Uh-huh.
real deal. I mean, you might see a nun here and there. Like
Yeah, we had nuns too
it
at
was
my
real
Catholic
deal.
school.
So I noticed we had that in common. And then I'm just now graduated from Hampton, just literally last month. So we have that in
hmm
common, the HBCU tie. And also, we're both from Illinois. So I
Right.
was just wondering about your experience before you even became who you are today. There's a lot of things I feel like you and I can both relate to on the high school experience, just going to a private school and going to a Catholic school, that it's definitely different for
Yeah.
us, especially being Black people. And I can imagine for you, you know what I mean? Just trying to be creative and find yourself. How was
Hmm.
that? Did you feel like it put you at an advantage? Because I always felt like a lot of kids would joke on us, me and my brother, for going to those schools. And then I kind of felt like I was in between two different worlds in a sense.
Yeah,
How
I
did you
think for
feel?
I think for me, Catholic school, like going to Catholic school for me was a blessing and a curse. It
Mm,
was a blessing because it allowed me to thrive academically. And
mhm.
like, you know how Catholic school is since you went, like, they do not play when it comes to academics. So you have to be on your Zoom. And like, the work is it's intense. And honestly, I say this all the time. My work in high school was harder than my work in college because I think going to a Catholic school with a very rigorous education system, like they teach you the importance of your writing, your math, and they set the foundation. So when you go to college, I remember like, especially going to HBCU, taking classes with people that, and keep in mind when I went to Morehouse, I took honors classes. Like I was in the honors program. And I still remember, even in the honors program, people still not knowing how to write fully and not knowing these little things that we learned when we were in at our Catholic schools. And I went to private school my entire life, so I've been building these fundamentals my entire life. But I think with Catholic school specifically, is different. Is that, and this is the con of it for me at least, is that it didn't allow me to express myself as a creative. And I think that
Mhm.
I am multifaceted where I am very smart, I'm very educated, but I am also very creative. And I wasn't allowed to really express myself that way while in Catholic school because that wasn't what they're there to do. They're there for you to graduate, go to college, get a job at a law firm, become a doctor, etc. Catholic schools are not there for you to leave and be an actor or be in entertainment. That's not what they were. That's not what they helped do. So yeah, I think that it was a blessing and a curse. And I think for what I do now, I'm able to mingle my creative life, but also my business life. So I'm never upset or mad that I went to Catholic school. I'm never like, oh, I wish I did went to this school or this instead. Because I think that the what I learned at my Catholic school really set the foundation for what I did in college, which really is helping me with what I do now.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't regret it, but I do think that there was like the pro and that con as well.
Yeah, you said that. You articulated that very, very well. I think
Yeah,
sometimes for us, it's hard to express what it is that we feel and how it affected us because I'm sure you've had a lot of experiences there that were tough. I know I did. And
yeah.
I was just like, I really don't want to be here. But at the same time, I know exactly what you mean on it. They make you competitive. Those schools make you so academically competitive. And did you ever have a moment where you were in school where you kind of felt like, now I got to show out? I really got to work hard and I really have to prove myself? Or was it just an internal thing with you?
Uh, I think for me, sorry, my dog is like rattling around the toilet. I'm like, I don't want it to. Yeah,
Hey,
I,
Harper.
I think for me, the moment when I was like, I have to show out came around, honestly, I would say it came when I first got to the school.
Mm.
I was like, no, 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 no. It wasn't when I first came. I think when I started was like, okay, I have to really put my best foot forward and go crazy. Oh, I have it now. Oh my gosh. I took this English class, um, and my teacher was Mr. De Laurentiis. Oh my gosh. And everyone said when they were like, "You're taking Mr. De Laurentiis, you're taking Mr. De Laurentiis," they explained to me how he was like the hardest um, he was the hardest teacher to like have. And I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to take it anyways. I'll be fine. Um, and when I took him, we did a paper, and I did a paper. I remember the paper and everything. It was a research paper on father absence and like how it negatively affects a child or whatever. And that was the argument that I was arguing throughout the paper. And when
Hmm.
I did that or whatever, he, I thought the paper was phenomenal. Everything was great, and we had 3 rounds of feedback. So after the first round of feedback, it was like, okay, this is cool. And then the second round of feedback is where we got our grade, and that was like the first grade that we got, and I got a D.
Mm.
And I realized it, and I thought I like did so well, and I realized it. Oh my gosh, I have to step my game up, and I ended up coming back, and I got. I'll be honest, when I got the second round, I only got a B minus, but that was that. I've never been so happy to have a B minus on a paper in my life because he
Right.
grade
So
so
hard. Yeah.
hard. And I
Hmm.
realized then like, yeah, I really have to like step it up. Like I really have to show out. Um, and I think that I showed out in my way. I think that everyone took different classes. Some people took AP classes. Some people went to a college and took courses. So I think I showed out in what's best for me and putting my best foot forward. And I think that's important, especially with a lot of people throughout everything we do, not even just high school or college, that we do the best for us where we are and
Yeah.
not try to compare ourselves to others and where they are. Because I have friends that like took 6 AP classes and I took 1 AP class, and I never thought I was less than or tried to compare myself or said, I'm not doing enough because I only took one. So, yeah.
Yeah. That's really, really good too. And I know that feeling of like, oh my goodness, like I beat the last level of whatever because I feel like in school in general, it starts out pretty good and then like especially once you start getting to those years when you're trying to just develop more and you want to push yourself a little bit more, there's these teachers and professors that everyone kind of scares you about. And even I'm curious at your mind, everyone's saying that this teacher was so hard. You were just like, I'm gonna take the class. You know what I mean? What made you just say that? Because a lot of people probably would have just listened to the people who had so much to say, but you went and experienced yourself. Then you got the D, felt discouraged, and still kept going.
Well, I'll be honest. I was late to applying to classes, so I kind of got the teacher. It wasn't like I want to take the hardest
Mm,
teacher. It was more so I was late to apply to my courses, so I didn't have a choice.
I
That's who
see.
your teacher is going to be. So it was
Interesting.
like that. Yeah.
That's
But
good.
I honestly will say that Mr. De Laurentiis, even though I really did not like him when he was my, I keep saying professor, but they don't call him professors in high school.
Yeah.
Didn't like him when he was my teacher.
Mhm.
But looking back, I love that he was so hard on me because he is the reason I had become such a great writer. Because I remember when I got to Morehouse and I took our honors classes, those are like the hardest classes you can take at this at this school. Um, when I took those honors classes, I took my writing class, and everyone said the same thing about this writing teacher too at Morehouse. They were like, he is so hard. He's really tough. He grades papers like awfully. Like, stay away from him. Again, I was late to register for class and I was stuck with him, like,
Mhm.
honestly. And I wrote one paper for him, and everybody got their paper back. And literally, I kid you not, everybody's paper was bleeding red ink on my paper, and everyone had their grades or whatever. And my paper, he gave it back to me, and literally at the top it said, come see me in my office. So I'm thinking, this paper is so bad that I have to go see him in his office. So I go to his office, and he said, I want you to change your major to English. This is one of the best papers I've ever read.
Wow.
And in that moment, I thought like, dang, if it wasn't for Mr. G. Laurentiis, this would have never even like came about.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it's good, and I think the lesson out of everything that I just said is more so that it's important that we challenge ourselves, especially while we're young. And that can be seen and shown through anything we do, like taking that career jump or taking that leap of faith and starting and doing your own business or starting your own thing. Like it's okay to do risky things because going to Mr. De Laurentiis was a risk, but you see how it paid off when I got to college. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, I just think that that applies to all aspects of our life, not even just within I don't know, school.
Yeah, it really, really does. How did Morehouse prepare you, do you think? Because I think I got a clear understanding of the things that you went through in high school and how it molded
Yeah,
you. Then when you got to Morehouse, this might be a stretch, but I feel like maybe probably one of the smartest students there because of your
no.
background. No.
I was not the smartest student at Morehouse at all, like by a long shot. Um, I graduated, and I think that's something that's very misinterpreted through my content because it's like corporate baddie, and it's like you went
Mm.
to private school your whole life, and then you went to a private college, and all this. I think people just assume, oh, you must just be so smart. And I have struggle areas in school, and I think this is the first time I'm openly even talking about this, but I too have struggle areas in school. Like math is not my strong suit.
Preach.
Yeah, science not my strong suit. So I mean, there's things that you know I struggle in, and I think when it came to college, I took a lot of business classes, and I did well in my business classes. But I think that, and I'm sure you know, when you get to college, sometimes you get distracted. There's this party especially at HBCU.
Oh my God,
There's
yeah.
this party happening on campus. It's Fried Chicken Wednesday.
Soul
You
Food
know,
Sunday.
so like there's just always something happening
Mhm.
on these campuses, and I think that I allowed that to distract me a little because like freshman year when I first came into Morehouse, I didn't know anybody. It was all on. So at the end of the semester, I had like a 3.9 GPA. And then at the end of my sophomore year, I had a 3.5. And then I graduated with a 3.45. So I went from a 3.9 to like a 3.45
Yeah.
because I was distracted. So I will say that I still did my work. I still worked hard, but I could have done a lot better than I did.
Mhm.
So I won't say I was the smartest. So yeah,
Do you think that in college, what do you think was the lesson outside of the academics? And thank you for sharing it because I feel like when I do look at your content, I do genuinely think, I'm like, oh, I know
yeah,
this boy is smart as hell. Like
yeah.
it just exudes that. And as it should, though, I don't think you
Hmm.
would want people to think like, you were not smart or not
Yeah,
capable. I think it comes across very clearly, but also I love the transparency that you're able to say like, look, I wasn't the smartest, but I held it down during my time when I was in school.
yeah.
What do you think in college made you become a better version of yourself? Because I feel like HBCUs, whether we know it or not, they do transform us
Hmm.
somehow, some way. What do you think your HBCU transformation was?
I think what my transformation for HBCU was is that it helped me to realize that man, it's so many things. I'll start with saying that it helped me realize, and I realized this very early on because I had a lot of mentors. Because I talk a lot. I talk to a lot of people. I like making conversations. I became close with a lot of my professors, like really close, probably too close. Um, but I think that what it really showed me was that when it comes to grades and all of that specifically, that doesn't matter fully. Like, yes, it matters. Like, do your work, go to class, get the best GPA that you possibly can. But there's so much more to life than grades. Because when you graduate from college, like, nobody cares about your GPA, honestly. Like, when I started in corporate America, no one cared. Actually, I remember when I started my big corporate job, they literally didn't even ask for my GPA so I had the job before I graduated, but they said when you graduate, we need your final GPA because, a lot of internships want to make sure you have a certain GPA, and usually
Yeah.
it's above a 3.5.
Yeah.
Um, and they were like, yeah, we want to get your GPA, blah, blah, blah. When I graduated and I started working, they never even asked for that for like a
Jesus.
GPA. So that just goes to show that your GPA doesn't matter. Um, And I think that in college, I really focus on a lot more of the uh, social aspects, and not social in a way of partying, but social in a way of being active on campus, joining organizations, connecting with mentors and making mentors, because those are the people who got me to help me to where I am now, not me getting an A in every class. That didn't get me
Mhm.
anywhere. But the relationships I built is what helped me it helped me get my corporate job. And then
Right.
from my corporate job, I had already had my own foundation and built that foundation from those people throughout college that I was good after that.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of times, a lot of people like to really hyper focus on uh, the whole idea of, oh, you have to get a great GPA. But it's really true what they say: C's get degrees. Get your degree and do what it is. And this is not me promoting like not working hard.
Right.
I do think that working hard is important,
Right. Yeah.
but it's just to say there's more than just Uh,
No, I get it. I get exactly what you mean because I feel like a lot of us too, a lot of students I've noticed, especially just coming out of school, there's this weird pressure to be perfect in every
mhm,
single area. And I was going to ask you because I felt this pressure a little bit when I was in
mhm,
school. Um why did you ever decide on Greek life? Cuz I know at HBCUs it's so big and
yeah,
I love my Greek friends. I love them
mhm,
very, very much. But my whole thing in school was I want to stand out without having to do
mm,
or join things that maybe I really, really deep
grandeur,
down inside don't want to do, but I know it's a
yeah,
thing. And everybody feels like if you're not a part of it, you're missing out on something or you can't be successful without it. And I
mm,
honestly, as a transfer at Hampton, I wasn't in many clubs or anything outside of my core major because I
right,
decided I'm going to be the campus host. But then, like,
mhm,
there's no campus host. I just start saying it. And then people just start calling me that. But there was no position for that. And I feel like that's
mhm,
relatable with you because there's no position for, well, let me be corporate baddie, TikTok influencer. Like, there was no straight path for that. So
yeah.
I was going to ask you before we get into that, why not Greek life for you? Or are you Greek and I just don't know about it?
First, I applaud you for creating your own space. I know that it's hard to do that any time of your life, but it's even harder to do that while you're in college because you feel this need to conform because you're surrounded by so many people. So I really do applaud you for that.
Thank you.
Secondly, um, well, my me not doing Greek was for a variety of reasons. A, both my parents are Greek, um,
Wow.
but I went to a historically black college, and Greek life wasn't a safe space for people who identify as me. So people who are a part of the LGBTQI plus community. Greek life wasn't really the space for that. And I won't lie and say I never tried. I did try. And then I really sat down and thought, why am I doing this? And I realized that when I sat down and put together all the reasons why I was doing it, it was to feel accepted by a group of people who are never going to accept me for who I
Mhm.
am, how I identify. Even if I join an organization, nothing's going to change, you know?
Wow. Yeah.
So that was the reason why I decided to not go Greek. Um, and also, the process was just too much. Also, and I'm like, look, I want to travel, I want to do things, and y'all are not
Yeah.
holding me up.
Yeah.
So that was my reasoning for it.
That is powerful, DeAndre, for real, because I feel
Yeah.
like a lot of people don't touch on that, especially with the LGBTQ space. Because very
Hmm.
rare did I see, there was one of my friends at school, Simi. He was probably the only gay boy that I seen a part of the fraternity, the frats and stuff. And I'm just like, that was his experience, and I honestly do want to ask him that process for him, because I'm sure it wasn't easy. But you really
Yeah.
were like taking a stance on, I tried it, but then also, this is another thing that I kind of want to go to. You recognized it then, that I'm forcing myself here in this
Hmm.
room, in this space, and then your family both being Greek. And I'm
Hmm.
sure you, as just a gay man trying to prove yourself with the family, with, should I get in this? Maybe they'll see me with this, and then we can get connected this way.
Yeah.
Did you have to recognize those areas as to why, like you said, why you were doing things? Did it attribute to that family connection too?
Um, I'll be honest, I never really felt pressure to join anything Greek through my parents. Like, yes, they're both Greek, but it was never like a pressure for me to join, which I know a lot of other of my friends and stuff, like they actually were pressure. Like their parents are like, you have to join, you need to do. I never felt that. So I was
Mm,
lucky there. Um, I don't think when it comes to a lot of things in my life, I never felt, and I always have to say this, like, I'm very grateful
mm,
that I had this because a lot of people don't. I've always had my parents' support through all of my life endeavors.
yeah,
Like, even now, they didn't understand what influencing was, but they got social media. They started utilizing it to keep up with me. And so I've
yeah.
always had support throughout everything that I've done. So I never felt like I had to do something because my family, but well, I never felt that pressure from them to do something because of them.
Hmm.
However, I did feel a pressure internally with myself to always want to impress them because they invested so much into me. And I
Right.
think that's where my I won't say it wasn't that was my issue with myself where I felt like, well, I needed to do the squeaky clean route because then it makes me look great. Oh, yeah, my son graduated from Morehouse and he went to Harvard Law and now he's working at a top law firm, or he graduated, now he's working at a top Fortune 100 company.
I see.
So it was always that I feel like I just had to be perfect to stand out. And then I realized that that was only something I was battling with myself because my mom didn't care. No one really cared. I mean, they cared because I was doing it. And they're like, okay, we support what you do. But yeah, I don't, yeah, it was more so with me than it was with my family, if that makes
Hmm.
sense.
That does make sense. Who do you think you are outside of all of the success? Like, if
Hmm.
everything was taken away from you and someone just had to look at you face value, we didn't know corporate baddie, we didn't know all these things that you've done, and if you could describe who you are outside of everything, because I feel like
Yeah,
so much of us in our society, it's so hard for us to not just lean forward and just be who we are, and not have to always equate our personalities to our success. You know what I'm saying? And I just had
yeah.
this conversation yesterday, and I was just like, I wonder if half of these people really, truly, truly are able to sit with themselves and be
Hmm.
like, who am I outside of everything that makes me successful? And I
Hmm.
wonder if you've ever had that just thought, because I'm sure you're well aware that you've done amazing things within this period of time, but do you
Hmm.
think about going back to just DeAndre outside of all of that? Like, who would you describe yourself as?
Yeah, I think that for me, and I always say this, I was put on this earth to help others. That has been what I
Mm.
love to do since I was a child. I'm a Boy Scout, and well, I'm an Eagle
Oh,
Scout actually.
oh,
Right?
okay.
But like I've done countless community service since a young age to Boy Scouts, and
Mm.
then even at college, I had a Bonner scholarship, so it was like a service scholarship. So I've always been someone who like I
Mhm.
love to give back, and you give
Yeah.
back, and I realize now that I'm in my adult life that you can give back in other ways besides just doing community service by helping others with you know things like even what I do on the internet, like that's helping others, that's helping people want to go into these corporate spaces and professional spaces. And I think that at my core, that's who I am as a person. So even with nothing and with no success, with nothing that I've been able to do, that's still who I would be
Mm.
because that's who I was before all of this. So I don't think any of that
Yeah.
would change. That's just me as a person. I really think that that's what I was put on this earth to do.
Yeah.
So,
I know a lot of people, and that is beautiful, DeAndre. I'm glad that you have an essence of it, because I feel like,
mhm,
especially with conversation, you're able to just kind of pick up a little bit whether someone is moving with their career, with their life. Are you moving in it genuinely? Like, what is
yeah,
the ultimate goal? Like, what is your actual purpose as to why you're doing all of these things? And I'm glad that service is a big thing for you, because I feel like that's the most important thing anybody could do, because it's just like,
yeah,
imagine all of it gets taken away from you. You still have this urge to give and to help and to do all these things,
yeah.
which is amazing. I want to ask you a lot about some career things, because
Okay.
you are the go to for all of it. And I'm sure there's a lot of people that see you, especially because my best
Hmm.
friend, too, we talk about this a lot. He, gay boy, actually in banking. So he follows you, and he was just telling, like, DeAndre is setting the standard for this new generation, to be
Hmm.
ambitious and to go into these spaces and just shake it up. So let's
Right.
say you have, um, we're just going to talk about in general. We're going to talk about the youth in general, because I don't want to put it in a box, because maybe there's other people that want to hear from you in this way too.
Hmm.
Let's say they want to get into influencing in 2023.
Hmm.
What would you say for them to do? Because you shook stuff up for you. And I want you to explain that
Hmm.
too, your process with just kind of breaking in there, and how did you keep up the momentum? But in 2023, what does this influencing space look like to you?
Yeah. It's so funny because before I even answer that question, I was in Las Vegas to visit some family a few months ago. And there was a little boy, that was at my family's house, and he was like really young. I think he was maybe 6, couldn't be
Mhm.
older than 7. And I asked him, I said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And he said, "A YouTuber." And
Mm.
I remember when I was growing up, I'm like, a fireman, a police officer. So I'm like, I think it's so crazy to see, even though I'm not even that old, but to see how the world is already starting to shift when it comes to like this whole idea of influencing and stuff like that. Like how that's actually, I think the idea that it's actually a career now is what's like
Yeah. It's a
still like a
thing.
shocker to me. Like it's like, wait, this is really a career. But no, I kind of hopped in, and the reason I hopped in is going to be the same reason I think that people should is going to coexist with the advice that I give for what people should do if they're trying to start. And what I did was I did my research, research that at the time, I don't know if it's probably more now, but at the time I was starting, 75% of people were like Gen Z in the workforce. I mean, we're Gen Z on the app. And I was doing workforce content, and that's what I wanted to do. That's what I wanted to focus on.
Mm-hmm.
So I I literally was like, okay, well, since 75% of the users on this app are Gen Z, I'm Gen Z, I'll just talk about it from my perspective as a Gen Z. So that was kind of
Mm-hmm.
how I tumbled into it through my research. Um, but also, I think another thing that people just see the once you made it, like once you're going up. But I mean, it took a minute, and I think that throughout that process, I continued to try different and new content. So I was always trying. I was very, very consistent. I would post literally like 5 times a day. Um,
Wait, okay. Let's go back. Because
mhm,
these are the things that, like you say, people don't digest it enough because they look at
yeah,
your immediate success after everything is done. But, like, talk about that real consistency that you have to do in order to get that. Because I feel like we don't touch on it enough for people to really, really
yeah,
get it won't happen over one night,
yeah.
you know?
When you're first starting, consistency is key because consistency teaches you a lot of things. If you're taking this really serious like I was, consistency will help you find what sticks. What do people like the most? So at first, when I was starting, I did several type of videos. So I would do like more videos about like being a lead. So it would be like, oh, like here's me going shopping, and I would do like a haul and things like that. And then I would do vlogs of like my life, like, oh, I'm vlogging, here's me walking Harper, blah, blah, blah. And then I would do a corporate video, like talking about corporate, like more just informative. And then and I realized that out of all of those videos, the one that performed the best was me being informative about corporate. So then I took
Mm,
that so you really have to pay attention to what is working, what are people gravitating to.
yeah.
So that's kind of how I started gravitating more towards corporate. So then, as I continued to experiment and just push out content consistently, I would gravitate towards more corporate videos, and I saw they were continuing to perform better.
Yeah.
Um, and then I think that's the thing. If you really are taking it serious, you have to be on that. Also, look on the app and see what type of content will perform better. It was always comical content. It was always skits. Skits performed like phenomenal. And that's when I was like, okay, well, let me try a skit, and
Mhm.
that's when my first skit was the first one that like blew up. Like
Wow.
it was so huge. So you see what I'm saying? You really have to
Yeah.
be willing to try things. You can't be scared to do certain things. You really have to experiment. It's important.
Yeah. I like that you were trying to. Did you get a sense of, because I know a lot of people, they stick to what they see, like whether they find their favorite influencer, then they think like, well, I should be a vlogger because she's a vlogger, or I should be a TikToker because DeAndre does TikTok and I can mimic him this way and get the same effect. But you have a unique way of
Yeah.
expressing yourself in content. That's why your brand, I feel like, will stand longer than a lot of
Hmm.
people's because it's able to stretch out more. You know what I mean? Like just with
Yeah.
motivating, like I watch a lot of videos of like Steve Harvey and Oprah and all these people. And for you, I just see that because so much of what you do revolves around motivating people and getting them to,
Hmm.
push themselves like they haven't before or just try things. So do
Yeah.
you think like
I
later on
think
in
that
life,
that's another. Oh,
oh, go
oh no,
ahead.
what were you saying? I'm
You were
sorry.
gonna touch on it. You were gonna touch on it.
Well, I was just going to touch more so on the fact that you mentioned about advice for people that want to be influencers in like 2023 and going forward is that people don't realize that we see there's a lot of people online that are making content. A lot of people with millions or hundreds of thousands of followers, but they're not making any money or receiving any income because they don't have a brand. And I think that as we continue to grow in this digital space, in this influencing space, having a brand is going to be so important because that's what, when you have a brand, people purchase all, they do what you say, if that makes sense. So, like,
Yeah.
so a company is going to come to me and ask me to promote their product, people are going to do, they're going to see, get, what basically, what I'm trying to say is when it comes to doing this as a career, companies want an ROI. That's a return on investment. So if
Mm-hmm.
you post a video for a brand and they don't get a return on investment, brands aren't going to work with you. And brands know usually who they work with that they'll have a high ROI with. And it's usually people who have a strong community and a strong brand.
Right.
Um, so I think that that's just super important as well when we talk about this whole idea of like what's working. You don't want to do what everyone else is doing.
Mm-hmm.
Don't. That's what I always say not to do. If everybody's vlogging and you really genuinely in your heart want to do vlog content, you need to find a way to do vlog content that is different than anyone else that's doing vlog content. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can't basically follow what is already taking place because it doesn't work. It doesn't work, especially as a black creator. It just doesn't work. I think other creators, like white creators and stuff, they can copy because the algorithm favors towards them anyways. But for us, the algorithm already doesn't favor towards us. So if
Yeah.
there's somebody else already doing that, your chances of also doing it is very slim. That's why I think it's important that people find their own niche and they create their own niche. Because that's where you go the furthest.
Yes, I agree. I agree too. And you don't, it doesn't seem like you have to try hard, DeAndre. I feel like that's why people are so infatuated with you is that
Mm-hmm.
your videos, you could just really sit through them. I remember the very first time I saw you on my For You page, the very first time I remember, I'm like, this boy is so cute, first of all. I'm like, DeAndre
Thank
is
you.
so T. And then I'm just like looking at the page and I'm just seeing like you're just back to back. And I noticed that. I'm like 5 times in a
Yeah,
day, like the videos are getting posted, and but you're being authentic. And I feel like
yeah.
that truly, truly resonates with just us. And I wanted to ask you, what do you love most about just us, like Gen Z? What do you love most about this generation?
I think the thing I love most about the generation is that hmm,
Right? It's a lot.
we have access to so much due to the internet, and
Mhm.
we have the power and the ability to utilize resources and information to truly affect change within society. And I'm a strong believer of change really comes in society when people are doing what it is that they was placed inside of them as a child, things that they are passionate about, things that they love to do. And I think for so long in this world, people did what they felt like they had to do. So working in the corporate 9 to 5 and doing that. And I think nowadays we see people, they may work a corporate job, but they're also doing passion projects on the side and things that they're passionate about. And I think that when people start to really do what they love and what they were believed that they were put on this earth to do, we will see real change within society. And I think that our generation is probably the first to really take that and like leap with it.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm most excited for and love about this.
That's amazing. So I do this final segment on the
Hmm.
podcast. It's just called the Final Four because it's set up for success. I'm like, well, let's just call it the Final Four. So I picked this up actually from Erica Badu. She had a speech, and it's always one of my favorites because she talks about the doctors within us that we should subscribe to, not like your typical medical doctor, but like the doctors within
Hmm.
us. So I have four of them, and you can just either give a word, maybe you can give a sentence. You don't have to draw it out, but however you want to give advice on the four, you do so how you please. Okay.
Okay.
So the first doctor in the four groups is Dr. Sleep. And I want your take on just sleep and just advice for people who probably just don't get enough rest.
Rest is important. It's very important because without rest, we can't live our best lives throughout the day. We're not thinking right. We're not our most creative self. So I think that rest is very important, and
Important. Yeah.
everyone needs to get rest. Like me, I probably sleep too much because I go to bed early
What time you
and
go to
I wake
bed?
up. Usually I'll go to bed around like 9-ish, 10-ish. But
You're
recently I've been going to,
lying.
yeah, I'm serious. And I wake up around like, but okay, when I'm back home in LA, I wake up at like 6, 7 a.m., 6:30, 7 a.m. Um, but not, since I've been in New York this summer and I've been going to bed at like 12 and I wake up at like 8, 9, 10.
That's still early for most, though.
Really?
Yes, like I feel like that's still like for us, like for our
Hmm.
generation, I feel like people just sleep into like 10. Like I'm so guilty of that. Like I gotta
Um,
get back on it. It's bad. It's really, really bad. Okay. Next one, I want to ask you, Dr. Spirit. So, in your spiritual space, what's advice that you can give for that spirit area that I feel like a lot of us kind of either neglect or just don't really take time to think on?
yeah, well, I do like to acknowledge like everyone isn't spiritual, but I am. And I think that especially when it comes to, I'm speaking from my perspective specifically, like when it
Hmm.
comes to like what I do in my life now, like I have to be spiritual. I have to have belief because I cannot continue to do day to day of not knowing what's next without having some sort of belief or some sort of spirituality. So for me, it's very important in the work that I do, and it keeps me going, and it reminds me that um, everything's gonna work out, everything's gonna be fine. Uh, yeah.
That's great. I love that. Number three is nutrition, Dr.
Hmm.
Nutrition. So, I want your take on just advice for the nutrition aspect.
Yeah, that's also that's where I lack the most. I'll go days and I'll eat like one meal a day, or I just you have to make sure you're giving your body what it needs.
Hmm.
Um, because even my mom says this all the time. She's like, DeAndre, you need to eat better because you'll feel better and you'll work better when you feel better. So
Yeah.
putting the right things in your body is very important, especially that's with everything. I was gonna say just with you working, but even
Yeah.
in your just day to day life is actually very important. So
Yeah. That's
all of
good.
these are important, though, which I'm
Yeah, for
saying.
sure. That's why I wanted to make them the final four because at least you can hit on something. You can get something out of it, because it affects
Yeah.
everything. And then the last one is just Dr. You. That's the
Hmm.
final doctor in the space. Like, or it could even be you could translate it to just your own advice or just how you take care of you or what's important to you that you just have on your heart that you just
I
want to
think
say.
Dr. Me is something that I'm realizing recently is making time for you, remembering that you are a person and that you are more than what you do, and that you are a being and you should make time for yourself. So finding things that you love to do that make you happy is really important. And sometimes, not all young people, but for me, I'm one of those people that's like, I need to conquer the world before I'm 30 so I can like relax. But while that's fine, and I'm still gonna try to strive to do that, it's important that I still take time for myself throughout these years as well, to
Yeah.
actually sit in this time in my life and relish in what I've done, and just with find out who it is that I am.
Mm.
Because I don't want to get too old and then I'm like, I hate myself because I neglected myself when I was younger.
Mm.
So yeah,
Yeah, that hit really, really hard. I feel like a lot of people are gonna sit with that though, because you don't wanna hate yourself in time because you didn't do the necessary things to even enjoy the fruits of your labor. It's gonna feel like it's not
yeah,
enough. It's always gonna
right,
feel like you gotta have more.
more, right.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's that.
Beautiful. Thank you, DeAndre. This wraps up episode 3. This I'm not even lying to you. This is one of my favorite interviews I've ever done. You are so authentic, transparent, and honest. And
Mhm.
just thank you for being you. And I want to give you your flowers and just tell you, just we see you and we appreciate you. And this won't be our last interview. I'll check up with you when you're a
Yes,
multi millionaire, and it'll be great. So thank you for joining us on Set Up for Success. I truly, truly appreciate you being on here.
yes. Thank you for having me.
Of course. All right, guys, that is a wrap. We will see you guys in the next episode.